What happens when one of Hollywood's most beloved and respected actors walks into what should have been a warm, routine interview, only to find himself walking straight into a trap set by a host more interested in controversy than conversation? Today, we're diving into the shocking confrontation between Michael J. Fox and Joy Behar that spiraled so far out of control it left the entire studio speechless, and ended with Fox being quietly escorted off the View set. This wasn't just another awkward celebrity moment. It was a brutal reminder of how easily media bias and personal agendas can twist genuine intentions into conflict. So, before we unravel how this entire disaster unfolded, make sure you subscribe and drop a comment below, because after hearing what happened, you might never look at daytime television the same way again. The morning began like any other inside the View studio. Makeup artists hurried between guests. Producers barked instructions through headsets, and the warm-up comedian got the crowd ready for another high-energy taping. In the middle of it all sat Michael J. Fox, calm and composed in the green room, going over his talking points for what was supposed to be a positive, uplifting interview about his Parkinson's Research Foundation. Dressed sharply in a tailored navy blazer, his signature gentle smile gave away no hint of what was about to happen. His publicist, Sandra, paced beside him, flipping through her phone, when it suddenly buzzed. "Michael," she said, glancing up, "they've moved your segment up. You're on first instead of second." Michael nodded, adjusting his cufflinks with his trademark humility. "That's fine. I'm ready. The work we're doing can't wait. Stem cell research is giving real hope to millions of families, and that's worth talking about." But outside that calm little green room, something entirely different was brewing. On the main stage, Joy Behar was in one of her infamous moods. Sitting at the panel table, she tossed her cue cards down with a sigh that caught her producer Rachel's attention. "Why are we giving this guy another segment?" Joy muttered. "He's been telling the same sob story for 30 years. Enough already." Rachel blinked, taken aback. "Joy, his foundation has raised hundreds of millions for research. He's literally changing lives. This is a feel-good piece." "Feel good?" Joy scoffed. "We're not Oprah. This is supposed to be journalism, not a charity infomercial. Maybe it's time someone asked where all that money really goes." From across the table, Whoopi Goldberg raised an eyebrow. "Joy, come on now. Michael J. Fox is a hero. He's been fighting Parkinson's for decades, and his work actually matters. Don't start something for the sake of drama." But Joy only smirked. "Whoopi, you call it drama. I call it asking the hard questions. Everyone gives this guy a free pass because they feel sorry for him. Well, I'm not afraid to dig a little deeper." Sarah Haynes looked up from her notes, clearly uncomfortable. "Joy, his foundation's been audited every year. It's one of the most transparent in the country. Over 85% of donations go directly to research." "According to who?" Joy shot back. "His PR team? Please, don't be so naive." Back in the green room, Sandra's phone buzzed again. It was Rachel calling, her voice tense. "Sandra, I need to warn you. Joy's been talking producers, and she's planning to go off script. She's asking pointed questions about finances and ethics. I just wanted Michael to be ready." Sandra frowned. "What? That's not what this appearance was supposed to be about. It's supposed to highlight the new clinical trials, not interrogate him like he's a politician." "I know," Rachel whispered, "but I can't stop her." Michael, overhearing, smiled faintly and rested a steadying hand on Sandra's arm. "It's okay. I've handled worse. If she wants to ask questions, I'll give her answers. The truth doesn't need protection." He stood, straightened his blazer, and began walking toward the stage. But as he approached the studio doors, he could already hear Joy's voice echoing through the speakers, dripping with sarcasm. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said to the audience during the commercial break, "our next guest claims to be revolutionizing Parkinson's research. But today, we're going to find out what's really behind those headlines." Whoopi shot her a sharp look. "Joy, let's not turn this into something ugly." "Ugly?" Joy replied. "It's called journalism. Someone has to ask what others won't." The stage manager waved the countdown 5, 4, 3, 2, and as the cameras rolled, the audience erupted into applause. Whoopi smiled warmly into lens. Welcome back to The View. We're joined by actor and activist Michael J. Fox, here to talk about his foundation's groundbreaking work in Parkinson's research. Michael stepped into frame, his signature grin lighting up the set as he shook hands with the host and took his seat. But even as he sat down, he could feel it, the chill in Joy's expression, the tension crackling in the air. What he didn't yet know was that before this interview was over, that tension would explode live on camera in a way no one, neither the audience, the crew, nor the millions watching at home, would ever forget. The tension in the studio was palpable as the segment continued. Every camera lens and pair of eyes locked on the table, where one of Hollywood's most beloved figures sat facing down a host whose words had turned from probing to poisonous. The Foundation's latest research initiatives, Sarah said, her voice calm but cautious, trying to set a positive tone. Michael, it's great to have you here. Can you tell us about these new partnerships you've formed with research institutions? Michael smiled, grateful for the soft opening. Thank you for having me, he began. We're really excited about our collaboration with Johns Hopkins and Stanford. We've identified promising pathways for stem cell therapy that could potentially slow or even reverse some of the motor symptoms of Parkinson's. That sounds amazing, Alyssa chimed in, her tone genuinely curious. How close are we to seeing treatments available to patients? We're still in early trials, Michael said, but the preliminary results are encouraging. We're looking at a timeline of maybe 5 to 7 years before these therapies are widely available, assuming continued funding and regulatory approval. He barely finished before Joy leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Michael, I have to ask you something our viewers are probably wondering. Her voice carried the sharp tone of a prosecutor, not a talk show host. You've been running this foundation for over 20 years. You're always asking for more money, more donations, more government funding. At what point do we say enough is enough? The studio went still. Even the air seemed to pause. Michael blinked, unsure he'd heard correctly. I'm sorry, Joy. I'm not sure I understand the question. Well, let me be clearer, Joy said, her tone cutting through the silence. Your foundation has raised hundreds of millions of dollars, and yet here you are, still asking for more, still promising breakthroughs that never seem to come. Don't you think people have a right to wonder if this is really about finding a cure or just keeping the Michael J. Fox brand alive? The words hung heavy in the air. Whoopi audibly gasped, leaning toward Joy. Joy, what are you doing? She hissed, but her mic picked it up, sending her shock across millions of screens. Michael sat still, his hands trembling, not just from Parkinson's, but from disbelief. When he finally spoke, his voice was low but resolute. Joy, in 35 years of doing interviews, that might be the most insulting question I've ever been asked. Oh, come on, Michael. Joy scoffed, rolling her eyes. Don't play the victim card with me. You built an empire on this disease. Book deals, speaking tours, charity galas where celebrities pay thousands just to feel good about themselves. At some point, someone has to ask the hard questions. Sarah Haynes looked horrified. Joy, maybe we should focus on the research. No, Sarah. Joy cut her off, raising her voice. This is exactly what we should be talking about. I'm tired of everyone treating celebrities like saints just because they get sick. Michael, your foundation's tax filings show you receive compensation as a board member. How much money have you made off your own disease? Gasps rippled through the audience. A few people shouted that's not fair and leave him alone, but Joy ignored them, her expression sharp and unrelenting. Michael took a breath, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. Joy, I think you've been misinformed about how charitable foundations work. I don't receive compensation from the Michael J. Fox Foundation. In fact, my wife and I have donated millions of our own money to these efforts. According to who? Joy challenged. Your own accountants? Your own PR team? You're asking me to take your word for it. And frankly, I'm not willing to do that anymore. Alyssa finally found her voice. Joy, this is completely inappropriate. The Michael J. Fox Foundation is rated as one of the most efficient and transparent charities in the world by multiple independent watchdog organizations. Watchdog organizations? Joy laughed coldly. You mean the ones funded by Big Pharma, the same companies that profit off Parkinson's drugs and your research grants? Wake up, Alyssa. This is how the game works. You build a disease narrative, get people emotional, then funnel money into research that benefits your corporate partners. Michael's jaw tightened. Are you seriously suggesting, Joy, that I'm faking my symptoms, or that Parkinson's disease itself isn't real? I'm not saying you're faking, Joy replied, though her tone dripped with doubt. I'm saying you weaponize your condition to build a financial empire. Meanwhile, you live in a mansion in Connecticut while asking everyday Americans to keep donating to a cure that might never come. The audience turned restless, voices rising. This is disgusting, someone shouted. Boos erupted. Whoopi leaned forward, trying to intervene. Okay, that's enough. We need to take this down a notch. No, Whoopi, Joy snapped. We don't need to take it down. We need to ask why this man gets a free pass while others don't. What makes Michael J. Fox so special? The camera zoomed in on Michael as he looked back at Joy, not angry, but heartbreakingly calm. His next words silenced the room. What makes me special, Joy, he said softly, is that I had a platform when I was diagnosed, and I chose to use it to help others. I could have walked away. I could have stayed quiet. But I believed I had a responsibility to do something meaningful with the time and voice I have left. If that makes you uncomfortable, maybe that says more about you than it does about me. The audience erupted into applause. Joy sat back, stunned, her face tight with frustration. Whoopi nodded toward the camera, signaling the floor director. We'll be right back, she said quickly, but the damage was done. What was meant to be a hopeful conversation about science had turned into one of the most uncomfortable, unforgettable live moments in daytime TV history. And for the first time, it wasn't Michael J. Fox who looked small under those blinding You can all applaud if you want, Joy sneered, her tone dripping with bitterness. But that doesn't make him a saint. It just proves how easily people are manipulated by a good sob story. The crowd, which had just finished applauding Michael's dignified stand, immediately turned on her. Boos echoed through the studio. Several audience members shouted, "Get her off the stage," and "You've gone too far." The tension was suffocating. Even the camera operators hesitated, unsure whether to keep rolling or cut the feed. Whoopi leaned forward, her expression deadly serious. Joy, enough. You crossed every possible line. But Joy pressed on, her voice rising above the noise. Oh, don't act so shocked, Whoopi. Everyone here knows it. The media treats people like him with kid gloves. You can't even ask a real question without being labeled cruel. I'm just saying what people think, but are too scared to say. Michael, who had remained standing, took a slow breath and turned toward her, his posture calm, but his eyes burning with quiet intensity. You keep calling this journalism, he said softly, but what you're doing isn't journalism, Joy. It's cruelty disguised as curiosity. You're not holding anyone accountable. You're humiliating someone who spent 3 decades trying to make the world better, even while fighting a disease that's taken almost everything from him. His voice grew stronger as he went on, every word measured but charged with emotion. You say I use my diagnosis to stay relevant? Joy, I would trade every ounce of fame I've ever had, every movie, every award, every dollar, if it meant I could wake up tomorrow without shaking. But that's not the choice I have. So instead, I wake up every day and try to make something good out of something painful. If that makes me your villain, then so be it. The studio erupted again, this time in a standing ovation. The audience rose to their feet, clapping and cheering, some with tears in their eyes. Even Sarah and Alyssa stood and applauded, visibly moved. Joy sat frozen, her face tight with anger and embarrassment. Whoopi finally turned to her and said, "You owe this man an apology." Joy's lips tightened. "I don't owe anyone an apology for doing my job." "Then maybe," Whoopi said coldly, "you shouldn't have a job on this show." A gasp went through the studio. Joy blinked, stunned that Whoopi had said aloud. The control room, meanwhile, was in chaos. Producers shouting over each other, trying to decide whether to cut the commercial or let the moment play out. Michael glanced toward the audience, then back at the host's table. "You know," he said quietly, "I didn't come here for sympathy. I came here to talk about progress, about hope. But maybe hope is something you've forgotten how to recognize, Joy. And that's sad." He reached down, unclipped his microphone, and placed it gently on the table. The movement was slow but deliberate, his trembling hand steady with purpose. "I think we're done here," he said. Whoopi stood as well. "Michael, I'm so sorry you had to go through this," she said softly. "You have nothing to apologize for," Michael replied, giving her a small, tired smile. "Thank you for at least trying to keep this civil." As he turned toward the exit, the audience began chanting his name, "Michael, Michael," their applause filling the studio like thunder. Joy sat rigid in her chair, staring straight ahead, her face pale and tight. For once, she had no comeback. The cameras followed Michael as he walked toward the door, every step echoing with quiet dignity. Just before he reached the exit, he turned back to face the panel one last time. "To anyone watching," he said, looking straight into the lens, "don't let moments like this make you cynical. There's real good being done in the world every single day. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." The studio exploded in applause once more. With that, Michael J. Fox gave a polite nod and walked off the set, leaving behind one of the most uncomfortable, unforgettable, and ultimately defining moments in daytime television history. When the show returned from commercial, Joy Behar's seat was empty. The studio fell into a heavy silence that felt almost physical as Joy Behar leaned into her microphone and said with a smirk, "But in 6 months, when he's back here asking for more money with another sob story, remember this conversation." That was the final straw. Michael J. Fox turned to her slowly, his expression calm but his eyes burning with restrained fury. And when he spoke, his voice carried the quiet authority of a man who had lived through pain most people could never imagine. "Joy," he said evenly, "I want you to listen to me very carefully. In my 30 years of living with Parkinson's disease, I've met thousands of patients and families who are fighting this condition every single day. I've seen people lose the ability to walk, to talk, to feed themselves. I've seen brilliant minds trapped inside bodies that won't respond. And in all that time, through all that suffering, I have never encountered anyone as callous and cruel as you've been here today." The air left the room. Even the cameras seemed to freeze. "You want to question my foundation's finances? Fine. They're public record. You want to question our research? Talk to the scientists at Harvard, Stanford, Johns Hopkins, people who've dedicated their lives to finding real answers. But don't you ever suggest that people suffering from neurological diseases are less deserving of help just because you don't like the messenger." For a brief moment, Joy seemed stunned, but her pride wouldn't let her stop. "I never said people don't deserve help," she protested weakly. "Yes, you did." Alyssa Farrah Griffin cut in sharply. "You said it when you implied Michael's foundation was fraudulent, when you mocked him for not finding a cure fast enough, when you turned his life's work into a punchline." Michael began unfastening his microphone, his movements calm but final. "I came here to talk about hope," he said, "to share progress that can help millions. Instead, I've been subjected to a character assassination built on cynicism and conspiracy theories." "Where are you going?" Joy demanded. "I'm leaving," Michael replied simply. "I don't have to sit here and let someone question my integrity when all I've ever tried to do is help." Whoopi stood too. "Michael, I'm so sorry," she said. "This isn't what The View is supposed to be." "I know it's not," Michael said kindly. "You've always been a class act. This isn't on you." But Joy's voice cut through again, dripping with defiance. "You can walk out if you want, but that doesn't change the questions I raised. Running away doesn't make you right." Michael turned back one last time. "I'm not running away from your questions, Joy. I'm walking away from your cruelty. There's a difference, though I don't expect you to understand it." "Don't be so dramatic," Joy snapped as he reached the edge of the set. "This is what real journalism looks like." Michael stopped and faced the audience directly. "Real journalism," he said clearly, "is about truth and understanding. What you witnessed here today was neither. To anyone watching who has Parkinson's or any other condition, please don't let this discourage you. Keep fighting. Keep believing. There are people out there who care. As he walked off, the audience rose to their feet in a powerful standing ovation that lasted over a minute. Some people were crying. Others shouted messages of support. Joy, incredibly, took their applause as validation. "See," she said, her tone smug. "He can't handle tough questions, so he plays the victim." Sarah Haynes turned to her, eyes glistening with tears. "Joy, what you did wasn't journalism. It was bullying, cruel and heartless." "I disagree," Joy said coldly, "and I'd do it again." Off camera, the producers were waving frantically, desperate to cut the commercial, but the damage was done. Whoopi stared straight into the lens and said, "We're going to take a break," her voice trembling with emotion. As the lights dimmed, Joy sat isolated at the table, her co-hosts avoiding her gaze, the audience's disgust palpable. Backstage, Michael was surrounded by crew members and staffers who wanted to apologize, some visibly shaken by what they'd witnessed. The moment that Joy Behar had thought would cement her reputation as a fearless interviewer had instead exposed her as the very thing Michael had called her, a cruel, callous opportunist who weaponized another person's suffering for shock value. For viewers at home, the contrast couldn't have been clearer. The man who carried himself with dignity despite illness, and the host who tore him down for sport. When Michael J. Fox left the building that day, he did so with grace, leaving behind a legacy of strength that no attack could tarnish. Joy Behar, on the other hand, had revealed herself in full daylight, and no amount of spin could undo it. What was meant to be an interview about hope and progress became a masterclass in the difference between asking tough questions and simply being cruel. And for everyone watching, one truth rang louder than any headline. Sometimes a real story isn't about science or fame. It's about decency and what happens when someone forgets how to show it.